Hey guys, welcome to another one synth challenge where I try to make a whole song using only one synthesizer by multi-tracking it. In this one, we've got the Moog Grandmother again. So this is a monophonic analog synth from Moog. And in this one, I'm going to be making sort of an ambient track to go along with this little pixel art I've drawn, which I'll show you in a sec. So if you're not familiar, ambient music is kind of, you don't focus so much on the musical structure or melodies or anything like that. You're more focusing on textures and kind of evolving sounds. And I have a quote that I'm going to read to you from Brian Eno, who's one of the pioneers, and he actually coined the term ambient music. So he says, ambient music must be able to accommodate many levels of listening attention without enforcing one in particular. It must be as ignorable as it is interesting. And the other way I've heard it described is that it's a type of music where you should be able to start at any point and kind of still enjoy it. So I'm going to take this challenge on. I'm not an ambient producer. I don't really make ambient music, but I wanted to challenge myself to learn the style and try to see what I can come up with. And this is going to be challenging for me because I traditionally love melodic music and I tend to want to kind of add melodies and chord progressions. But ambient music is kind of the opposite of that. You don't want to draw too much attention in any given riff. So if you saw my last video, I did a video game composition for an imaginary game. And for that, I taught myself how to make very simple pixel art. And since then, I've kind of become obsessed with pixel art. I've watched tons of different tutorials and videos on how to do it. Because I'm a very visual person, so when I see a nice picture or something that evokes a mood, it kind of generates musical ideas for me. So I love that marriage between visual media and audio media, like music for films or music for games, etc. For this one, yesterday I was sketching some stuff and I made this kind of mountain scene and I animated the clouds a bit. So I'm gonna overlay it on the video so you can see it. And because this has this kind of vintage, sort of warbly VHS vibe going, I'm gonna use this as the basis for inspiration for composing this ambient piece here, and it's kind of gonna go along with this animated picture. So you can think of it as kind of a micro animated GIF movie or like a scene from a game or something. All right, so in Ableton Live, all I'm gonna do is track audio tracks. I'm not gonna use any MIDI because I don't want anything to be rhythmic or locked to a grid. And I've loaded up 3 different instances of Valhalla reverbs as 3 different return tracks. So I have the VintageVerb, the Room, and the Shimmer. And I've just selected some presets that are super kind of larger than life reverbs. So for my first patch, I've made this kind of Boards of Canada type flute. Super simple, just a single triangle, filter almost all the way closed, a bit of contribution from the envelope, and the envelope has sustain all the way up, bit of release, bit of decay, tiny bit of attack, just so we're not getting super percussive hits. And that's basically it. And then the main thing is I have an LFO controlling the pitch at a super low rate controlled by the mod wheel here. And that's how I can get those warbly pitch sounds. And obviously I can tone it down with the mod wheel here. So the key now is I'm just gonna exaggerate one of these large reverbs here. All right, so I'm just gonna hit record. I'm gonna pull up that animated GIF just to kind of inspire me, and I'm just gonna lay down some lines. All right, so that was the first track and that took a whole 6 minutes. So I'm just gonna keep that as the bed and then I'm just gonna add subtle layers on top of that. And I'm gonna try to restrain myself to not go too crazy because you can very easily go out of ambient into more of like a melodic thing that grabs your attention too much. So maybe for the second one, I'm gonna try to emulate more of a noise, sort of wind effect, because in that animated GIF I have kind of clouds rolling in the background and there's kind of mist at the foot of the mountain. All right, for this one I'm going to use the Valhalla Shimmer plugin, and a Shimmer reverb just has a pitch shifter or harmonizer in its feedback loop, so you get these kind of almost like a second pitch going as you play something. In terms of the patch, I've turned off all the oscillators. The only one I have is noise, and I'm just going to use noise and the filter. I've added a super slow attack on the amp envelope here just so that I don't accidentally trigger kind of a fast hi-hat or something. And then I'm just going to perform this by blending it between kind of ocean waves and wind. And to get wind, you just want to increase the resonance and then tweak the filter, and you'll get that almost like wind going through the crack of a door. And then by changing the cutoff frequency, you can get that wind effect. So as I'm performing, I'm just going to be tweaking the cutoff frequency, the resonance. All right, so for the third layer, I've created this patch that is also pitched, and I'm just gonna create almost like a droning sound. So I'm just gonna almost hold a single note the whole time and let the texture evolve. So let me briefly explain the patch here. So I have the sample and hold output coming out of the LFO here to control the pitch of oscillator 2. And then I've set it to sync to oscillator 1, so that pitch change won't be perceived as a note change. It'll just change the timbre of the oscillators. Both oscillators are on, both are set to the thin pulse width. And then I have pulse width modulation set here on the LFO with maybe 50% on the mod wheel and a super slow LFO rate. So, and the cutoff frequency is also being modulated by the LFO. So what's happening here is that as the LFO goes up and down, it's opening and closing the filter. It's changing the width of the pulse, which is changing the timbre. And every time the cycle completes, it fires off a random voltage out of the sample and hold, which will change the frequency of the synced oscillator, the oscillator 2 synced to 1. All right, so I've created another noise patch. So I've bypassed the low pass filter by taking the mixer through the high pass and then skipping over into the VCA. And then I've added the spring reverb at about 75%. And the attack is again very slow, so we get kind of evolving sounds. And I've added a ton of Valhalla room in a super large big space reverb. So that sounds like this. The cutoff frequency of the high pass filter is all the way up, so we're getting a very thin noise. Right, I'm gonna end it there. As much as I want to keep layering tracks and add melodies and harmonies, I really need to restrain myself and focus on the absolute minimalism of this piece here. So I'm just gonna edit it a little bit and maybe pan some things left and right and add some pan automation as I'm going through it. And then I'm gonna upload it on Spotify, iTunes, and all the other streaming services. And I'm gonna put the whole song at the end of the video so you can hear what that sounds like. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.